There is a serious public safety crisis happening on our public transportation system. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So there's a 30-year-old man who is dead. He was killed in a stabbing at the Capitol Hill light rail station. This happened Saturday afternoon. Broad daylight. The Capitol Hill light rail station is a very busy station. If you have not been there before, I have taken light rail from downtown up to Capitol Hill many, many times. Our friend Jonathan Cho got his hands on some images that show, what a horrifying scene. And yet another gruesome scene of violence on public transportation. So there's not reports yet of any arrests. This is from the SPD blotter. Homicide detectives are investigating after a man died from a stabbing at the Capitol Hill light rail station Saturday evening. At 5:48 p.m., officers responded to a report of a male stabbed at the station. Officers arrived. They located the 37-year-old suffering from multiple stab wounds. Aid was provided at the scene, and the man was transported to Harborview Medical Center in critical condition. Despite life-saving efforts, he succumbed to his injuries. Police are working to determine the circumstances that led up to the assault. Male suspect fled the scene following the stabbing and remains unidentified. Now, I think one of the troubling things to me with the violence on public transit is that so much of what our elected officials have done and our public agencies have done have directly contributed to this crisis and made it worse. Obviously we have the overall crime crisis that is a result on soft on crime policies, on giving people a slap on the wrist. We have a serious issue with repeat offenders who cycle in and out of the system, who are driven sometimes by drug abuse, oftentimes by mental illness, and who, despite being arrested over and over and over, they get no help whatsoever to address the underlying reason why they are committing crimes and sometimes perpetrating acts of violence. Some of the most gruesome incidents that we've seen happened at the hands of someone who was very clearly mentally ill and who had multiple interactions previously with law enforcement. Now, we can't say that's the case here because this individual remains unidentified, but I would be willing to bet money that that is going to be the case because we see this very similar pattern. And then we went through this period of time where there was just a free-for-all on public transit, where it's like, well, we're not going to ask people if they bought a ticket. We can't do that because that might be racist. And this really kind of took hold during the 2020 anti-police movement and the movement for racial justice, where it's like anything where we might believe that there might be some sort of disproportionate outcome, we're just going to totally, scrap it and it'll be a free-for-all on the streets. So it's like, here's law-abiding citizens trying to get from point A to point B, get to work, get to games, go out with friends, whatever it is, and ride this public transportation system, whether it's light rail or a bus, that you keep telling us to ride, that you keep saying, we've got to do this, you got to ride more, we need to make it more of an incentive for people to ride public transportation. Yet you don't care to take any steps to make it safe, and quite the contrary, you take steps to make it more dangerous. And people who are mentally ill and who are drug addicted and who are dealing with, as a result of one of those two things, homelessness. And if they know, well, there's not going to be any sort of fair enforcement, that's when these issues really started to take off in a serious way. Even King 5. King 5's headline on this, as critical as I am sometimes of King 5 and what I feel like is not enough attention toward the true public safety crisis that we're in. This is their headline on this. The city has failed him. Man stabbed to death at Capitol Hill light rail station. So they spoke to a witness on King 5, and the witness told them they kept attacking him. He was defending himself, and he got pushed into the rails, and they kept him from getting up by punching him. At least two of them were punching him, keeping him on the rails. The man who saw the stabbing unfold said he believes this death could have been prevented. Quote, the city has failed him, the witness told King 5. They might as well have murdered him themselves. That is a strong statement, and I'm actually stunned that King 5 printed it. So this is what a spokesperson with Sound Transit had to say. They sent King 5 a statement. They said, the safety of our passengers and staff is Sound Transit's top priority, which then that's sad. If you're telling me it's your top priority, you're very clearly failing. We take any event that threatens the safety of our passengers and staff very seriously. The stabbing at Capitol Hill Station was horrifying and tragic, and we mourn the loss of this person's life. We also know this alarming and tragic act understandably raises very real safety concerns, even though violence around and on our system is exceedingly rare, and they always have to throw that in. Passengers and staff want to know that they are safe and when they're riding our trains. And that's the thing is like, whenever people use numbers that to try to, you look at crime numbers and people are feeling unsafe or being victimized and you're like, yeah, but the crime numbers aren't that bad. Like, how tone deaf are you? It doesn't matter to the person who was stabbed to death. It doesn't matter to that person's family that attacks on public transit are exceedingly rare. To throw that into your statement is such an insult. And to say at the beginning, again, the safety of our passengers and staff is Sound Transit's top priority. That cannot be true. And again, if it's your top priority, every single person in any position of authority at Sound Transit should lose their job immediately. Because you're in any career, any private sector, anything, if you're failing at your top priority, failing miserably, you would not keep your job. And I go back to not only violent issues. Remember what we were told about King County Metro? And riding on buses that reek of fentanyl smoke and meth smoke that have turned into drug dens? You remember how the University of Washington, they commissioned a study? And UW basically says, we detected meth in 100% of samples, but no evidence that it's dangerous to you. And Metro comes out and says, no evidence that breathing in meth smoke and touching the remnants of fentanyl, a drug that can kill you in a dose so small you don't even have to be able to see it with the naked eye. That's not a concern. Just keep riding. Keep riding it, as opposed to any amount of meth and fentanyl on our public transit is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to riders. It's unacceptable to drivers who sit and smoke and sit and breathe the smoke all day long. Rather than say that, they make excuses for it. And they try to gaslight you into believing, yeah, you can ride in a drug den with drug smoke all around you. You can bring your kids. Yeah, ride with your kids down to the game on public transportation filled with meth smoke. And they want to convince us it's not a big deal. So when Sound Transit says safety is our number one priority, our top priority, that is incredibly sad because you are failing. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be notified of opportunities to be able to go out and make a difference in what's happening in this state of ours.